Hello and welcome back to the Solo Gamers Club. This is part 4 of our playthrough of Eldritch Horror against Yig, the father of serpents. We've yet to solve our first mystery, and that's to defeat the winged serpent in Tokyo. There is an active rumor, an ongoing rumor called Awakening the Old Ones, and that is going to continue to degrade the Doom track unless we can solve that. Doom track currently is at 5, so we're running out of time. Our lead investigator is Monterey Jack. He's currently in Cape Town, South Africa, and we'll begin the action phase starting with him. Monterey is currently at 2 of 5 sanity, so I think we're going to take a rest action and boost up his sanity from 2 to 3. And then there is a clue token in the heart of Africa, and I think that we'll have Monterey move there, and instead of doing the token encounter for research, we're going to use that as an opportunity to try to get one success against that ongoing rumor. So we're going to do a move action for Monterey. He'll move from Cape Town to the heart of Africa. And that's going to complete Monterey's turn. We'll move on to Roland Banks. He's in the Midwest. Roland is going to begin with a rest action, and that's going to bring his health total from 5 up to 6, and his sanity level from 2 up to 3. Roland is already in a space with a clue token, so we're going to leave him there, and I think he's going to do a focus action, and that's going to complete Roland's turn. We'll move on to Daryl Simmons. Daryl is currently in Bombay, India. And I'm going to begin with a rest action for Daryl as well. That'll gain 1 health and 1 sanity, bringing his health up to 7 of 7 and his sanity at 3 of 5. And I think we're going to have Daryl do a move action. He's going to take the rail line from Bombay to Istanbul. Istanbul is the location of the expedition, and there, excuse me, there's also a cultist at that location, so we don't want another cultist to appear there, because if that happens, there would be 2 or more in that same location, and Yig's reckoning effect would eventually kick in, also moving the Doom track down by 1. That will complete Daryl Simmons. We'll move on to Hank Sampson. Hank is currently in Shanghai with 1 rumor token, and he could technically move into Tokyo and attempt the combat against that winged serpent. There's also a flying polyp in Tokyo, which is going to complicate things. Hank currently has 2 focus tokens and 2 clues, and he's at full capacity for health and sanity. So I think we're going to have to do it. We're going to make the movement into Tokyo, and then we'll kind of prepare ourselves for that attack on those creatures there. Hank takes the sea lane to Tokyo, and once there, he's going to do a component action. And then we're going to take a little bit of a risk here. We're going to attempt that component action on Hank's card, and it says test strength. If you pass, discard 1 monster on your space with a toughness less than or equal to your result. Now, unfortunately, the flying polyp has a toughness of 4, so we're going to need to get all successes on this, and we could technically use our clue tokens and focus tokens to try to do that. And I think we'll just give it a shot and see what happens. Hank Sampson has a strength value of 4, so he'll be rolling 4 dice for the test. Now, as this is not a combat test, none of his weapons will be able to be utilized in this. And Hank rolled only 1 success, so we would have to try to, by rerolls, attempt to engineer 3 more successes. So that isn't too likely, I guess. I'm not going to burn any clues or focus tokens in an attempt to do that. We'll save those for the actual combat that will occur during the encounter phase. That's going to complete the action phase. We'll move on to the encounter phase. Monterey Jack is in the heart of Africa. He is in a location with a clue token, and he's going to attempt to get a success against that rumor card. And the rumor card is awakening the old ones. And it reads, as an encounter, an investigator on a space containing a clue may attempt to stop the ritual. A cultist monster ambushes him. If he defeats it, he places that clue on this card. All right, so we are going to get an ambush by a cultist. So we're ambushed by a cultist, and the rules for ambush read, some effects cause investigators to encounter monsters that are not on the game board. When an effect says a monster ambushes you, the investigator draws one random monster from the cup and immediately encounters it for combat. After resolving combat, he returns the monster to the monster cup. In this case, it's going to be using those cultists that we've set aside during the setup for Yig. So we've placed one on the board, and we're going to have to try to defeat this in order to place the clue token on the card. If we can get half as many as his investigators, then we'll solve the rumor. So we need 2 successes, one from this encounter and maybe one from rolling banks or something. We'll see what happens. And we'll begin with the will test. The cultists have a horror value of 1. Monterey Jack has a will of 2, but it's been impaired, so he has a will of 1 right now. And we'll see if there's any other cards that can help him. No, so he's going to be rolling only 1 die. And he's rolled a 2, so he's failed. The horror value of the cultist will kick in, and he's going to lose 1 sanity. That will move him down to 2 sanity. And now we're going to undergo the strength test. The cultists have strength -1 with 2 damage, and it has a toughness of 1. It does say, though, that if you lose health from the strength test, you've been bitten by a snake-like creature, gain a poison condition. So we don't want to lose any health on this. Hopefully we can get 2 successes during the test. Monterey Jack has a strength of 4. It's been impaired, so he's at 3. He's going to employ his Mauser C96, which will gain him +2 strength during the combat encounter. And it does allow him to re-roll 1 die when resolving a strength test. So we'll start with that. So we'll be rolling a total of 4 dice for the test. Monterey did a good job. He's got 2 successes, 2 6s that will not only defeat the cultist, but he will take no damage from the encounter. And we're going to place that clue token on the rumor. If we can get 1 more there, we will solve it. And that will complete his encounter phase. We'll move on to Roland Banks in the Midwest. We have a similar situation. Roland is in a space with a clue token, and he's going to do the same thing. He's going to attempt to solve that rumor card, so we're going to have to fight against the cultist there. And we'll begin with the will test. Roland Banks has a will of 3. And we'll see if we have any cards that can help us increase that. No, we don't. So he'll be rolling a total of 3 dice for the test. The cultist has a horror value of 1. And he's rolled 2 2s and a 1. That's a fail, so he's going to lose 1 sanity due to the cultist's horror value. That will reduce him from 3 down to 2. We'll move on to the strength test. Roland has a strength of 2, and it's been augmented, so he has a total of 3. He's going to employ his axe, which will gain him +2 strength during combat encounters. And it also says you may spend 2 sanity to re-roll any number of dice when resolving a strength test. Well, he has no sanity ability to do that. He's already at 2, so we won't be able to do that. But he does have 1 focus token that we can use. So we'll be rolling a total of 3 + 2 - 1, 4 dice. And unfortunately, he has no successes. So what we're going to do then is I guess we're going to use his practiced card, and that's going to allow once per round you may gain up to 1 additional die and re-roll up to 1 die when resolving a test. If we fail, we're going to have to flip the card though, so we'll do that. We're going to add an extra die and re-roll 1 of the faileds. And Roland has 1 success. That would be enough to take out the cultist, but unfortunately he would gain 1 point of damage, which would give him a poison condition. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to spend his focus token, and we're going to try to re-roll that failed die, and we'll see what happens. Here's the roll. He rolled a 2. It's a failure. I have no more ability to do any re-rolls. So we are going to end up taking, we're going to defeat the cultist. The clue token will go on the rumor, and that will solve that rumor. But unfortunately, Roland is going to take 1 point of damage, reducing him from 7 down to, I'm sorry, from 6 down to 5. And then he's also going to gain that poisoned condition. And then we're going to have to, we did get a success. It says if you fail that test. We truly didn't fail the test, so we don't have to flip the card for the practice. But we're going to gain that poison condition. And the poison condition says illness. Whenever you rest, whenever you perform a rest action, you cannot recover health nor sanity. Flip this card. On a reckoning, we're going to lose a health. Okay. That's going to complete Roland Banks' turn. At least we've gotten rid of that rumor card. And we'll move on to Daryl Simmons in Istanbul. Daryl's in Istanbul. There is a cultist there, so he's going to have to do a combat encounter. And we'll begin with the will test. Daryl has a will value of 3, so we'll be rolling 3 dice for the test. Daryl rolled 2 successes, so that exceeds the horror value of the cultist, so we're going to take no sanity damage. We'll move on to the strength -1 test. Daryl's strength value is a 2 right now, and he has no other way to augment that, although it does say he rolls 1 additional die when resolving a test during a location encounter if he's in a city, so that will qualify. So Daryl is going to be rolling a total of 2 + 1 -1 dice, and we'll see if he can take that cultist out. And Daryl has rolled 1 success, so that's sufficient to take out the cultist, but he would be gaining a poison condition because he didn't exceed the damage level. So I think what we'll do is we'll have Daryl spend one of his clue tokens, and he's going to re-roll that failed 1 die and see if he can get another success. He did. So he's defeated the cultist, and he will not take any poison condition for that, and which is good. And now, since there are no more monsters at his location, he can take a bonus action. And Daryl has several options. He can either take a location or token encounter. The location encounter would be either an Istanbul encounter, generic city encounter, or he can take the expedition encounter. And I think Daryl's going to end up taking the Istanbul encounter. And the card reads, you find a card clutched in a dead man's hand. Gain the 5 of Pentacles unique asset. All right, let's get that card out and see what it is. The 5 of Pentacles. And the 5 of Pentacles is a trinket tarot. When you gain this card from the deck, improve influence. Okay, that's great. That is going to get Daryl Simmons, that will remove one of the 2 impairments that he had to that value. So his observation now is 4 - 1 instead of 4 - 2. That's good. We'll continue reading. It says here, you find evidence that he was a member of the esoteric order of Dagon. Now the order is looking for you. Escape will require some bribery. Lose 2 health unless you gain a debt condition. Okay, he has plenty of health, so I think what we'll do is rather than take the debt condition, we're going to move him down from 7 health down to 5 health. And then taking a little closer look at that 5 of Pentacles, it says whenever you roll a 1 during an influence test as a part of an acquire assets action, you may re-roll that die. So that's kind of valuable. That's good. That is going to complete Daryl Simmons's encounter phase. We'll move on to Hank Sampson. Hank is in Tokyo, and he has 2 monsters in his location. A standard monster, Flying Polyp, and an epic monster, the Winged Serpent. So we have to, by the rules, we must fight the non-epic monsters first. So we'll be taking a look at that Flying Polyp to start. That flying polyp is not an easy one. We'll begin with a will -1 test with 2 sanity damage, potentially 2 horror. So we'll start with that. He has a will test value of 3. It's been impaired, so it's at 2. And he's going to be using, I believe, his Spirit Dagger, which is going to give him +1 to will and +2 strength during a combat encounter. So that will give us a value of 3 -1 +1 and -1. So we'll be rolling a total of 3 -1 is 2, +1 is 3, -1 is 2. He'll be rolling 2 dice for the test. And Hank rolled 1 success, so that will reduce the horror rating of that creature down to 1. So Hank is going to end up taking 1 sanity damage, moving him from 4 down to 3. We'll move on with the strength test. It has a strength -2 with 2 damage and 4 toughness. So Hank is going to use his strength, which is a 4. He's going to add in +2 for his Spirit Dagger, that's 6. And then the creature has a -2, so we'll be rolling a total of 4 dice for the test. I just noticed it says on his card his passive ability is you do not resolve the will test during a combat encounter unless you lose health from the strength test. So I think for right now, we'll leave it as I've done it. And if it ends up that I end up not losing any strength, we'll return the horror point, that sanity damage that he lost during that test. Okay, here's the roll. And unfortunately, Hank did not roll any successes. So as it stands now, he would be taking a total of 2 damage from that conflict, and then he would also end up taking that sanity damage that we've already accounted for. So I think we're just going to play that out, let it play out. We'll take the 2 damage, moving him from his total of 8 down to 6, and we'll save our resources for the attack against the Winged Serpent. That's next. And the Winged Serpent, we begin with the will test. Now, once again, he has that ability. Do not resolve the will test unless you take health damage from the strength test. So we'll pass on that for now. And it does say if you lose health from the strength test, gain a poisoned condition. So we'll start out with the strength test. It's a -2 test with a damage of 4. Hank has a strength of 4. He's going to use his Spirit Dagger, which will give him +2. That's a total of 6. And then -2 will be 4 dice. So we'll be rolling 4 dice for the test. And Hank ended up with 1 success. We're definitely going to have to use some of our assets here. I think we'll start out first by using a focus token. And we're going to re-roll one of those dice. We have 1 success right now. Here's the re-roll. That's a failure. We'll use another focus action and re-roll that one again. That's a failure. And then he's going to spend a clue, I guess, and use his camera. And the camera says once per round when you spend a clue, you may gain a clue. So we get basically a free use of that token. And we'll try a re-roll on that. That's a failure. And I think we're going to spend 1 more clue token to try to get another success. We'll re-roll that. I'm going to try another die this time. And he rolled a 2. It's all failures. So we inflicted 1 point of damage on the Winged Serpent. And that means that he's going to take 3 points of damage. And he's going to gain a poisoned condition. That's going to reduce Hank Sampson down to 3 health. And he's going to gain a poison condition. And then we have to roll now for the will test. It's a will -1 test. He has a will value of 3, -1 for his impairment. That's 2. He gains 1 from the Spirit Dagger. So that's back up to 3. And then we're going to subtract 1 for the test. So he'll be rolling 2 dice. Amazingly, he rolled 2 successes. I wish we could have had that during the combat portion of the test. So he's going to take no sanity damage. And unfortunately, that is going to conclude the combat. We're going to mark the winged serpent with 1 point of damage. It has a total toughness right now of 6, minus the 1 is 5. And that was not a good result for Hank Sampson. We would really needed him to step up to the plate at this point, and he wasn't really able to do that. So that is going to conclude our encounter phase. We'll move on to the Mythos phase. And the Mythos card is a yellow card, and we'll begin with a Omen Track advancement. And that's going to move the Omen Track from the green comet to the blue star pattern. We do have one gate open, that's the one in Tokyo, and that's going to advance the Doom Track from 5 down to 4. The revealed gate stack is a red one in Arkham, so it will not have an impact on us with this Omen Track movement. We'll move on to the Reckoning phase. And we'll begin the Reckoning phase by checking for Reckoning effects with monsters on the board. And we know that there is one, that's a Flying Polyp in Tokyo. And I believe there's another one in San Francisco, and that is the Child of the Goat. Okay, we'll start out with the Flying Polyp in Tokyo. And that Reckoning effect for the Flying Polyp says move this monster to the nearest space containing a gate. Well, it's already in a gate space, so it won't be moving, and we'll check the Child of the Goat in San Francisco. And the Child of the Goat says roll a die on a 1 or 2, advance the Doom by 1. And unfortunately the roll is a 2, it's going to advance the Doom from 4 to 3. Not good. And the next step during the Reckoning phase would be to check the Ancient one for any Reckoning effects. And Yig does have one. It says spawn a cultist monster on the active expedition space. Then if there are 2 or more, advance the Doom by 1. The active expedition is in Istanbul. There are no cultists there because luckily Daryl Simmons defeated that one. So we won't be moving a Doom Track, but a cultist will appear there, and we'll place that in Istanbul with the expedition. Next would be any rumor cards. Well, luckily we've solved that rumor just this turn, so that one is good. Now we're going to go on to the next step would be for possessions and conditions of each of the heroes. And we'll start with Monterey Jack. Monterey does not have any cards with Reckoning effects. Roland Banks, though, he does. And he's got that poison condition, and we'll have to deal with that. And Roland's poison condition says fever dreams. Each night the dreams become worse. You can barely sleep, and when you do, you are haunted by terrifying visions. We have to do a will -1 test. Okay, Roland has a will of 3, and that will be modified down to 2, so he'll be rolling 2 dice for the test. Roland rolled a 2 and a 6, so he's passed. And it says if you pass, discard this card. That is great. So we were managed to get rid of that poison condition. And then we'll move on to Daryl Simmons. He has no Reckoning effect cards or conditions, but Hank Sampson does. He also has a poison condition. And the poison condition reads, medical assistance. The poison has spread, and none of your supplies have been of any use. You'll have to find a well-supplied medical professional in the city. If you are on a city space, test influence -1. Okay, and Hank is in a city. He's in Tokyo, so he's going to have to test his influence -1. His influence is at a 2. That will move the test down to 1. He has no other cards he can use that will help that, but he does have 1 clue token. So we'll make the test. Hank's roll is a 4, and I think what we'll do is we want to get rid of that condition for sure. I think we'll try the spending the clue token to re-roll that die. Here's the roll. He did roll a 5, so he's successful. And it says, if you pass, discard this card. Okay, that's good. That's going to complete our encounter phase. I'm sorry, that completes that Reckoning phase. And then we'll move on to the next step in the card, which is going to be to spawn a gate. And as we're playing with a revealed top gate stack, we know that the gate is going to appear in Arkham. And we'll see what monster accompanies that. So that red gate appears in Arkham, and with it a werewolf. And the werewolf has a reckoning effect that says that it moves one space towards the closest investigator. Okay, well, now the next step in resolution is going to be to read the event. And the flavor text reads, "The police find you trembling on the floor of your hotel. You can hear them asking if you are hurt. They want to know where all the blood came from, but even after all you have done, all you can think about is your insatiable hunger." Ravenous hunger event. The lead investigator, which is going to be Monterey Jack, gains a hunger condition. Then he discards one ally asset and loses 2 sanity. Well, that is pretty much disastrous as we can get. Because the lead investigator is Monterey Jack. If he loses 2 sanity, he's going to go insane. So that is what is going to happen. I have no way to prevent that. He has a rugged condition, but that only applies to strength, I believe. Once per round when you would lose 2 or more health. Yeah, it's only for health. So that is going to drive Monterey Jack at the heart of Africa, drives him insane. Monterey is placed in a prone position. We place a sanity token on there to let us remember that he went insane. All his possessions and his card will be placed off to the side of the map, and someone that chooses to want to travel to the heart of Africa can end up encountering that and read the back of his card to find out what the status of his possessions will be. And then now we're going to have to draw a new investigator. Well, we have to pass our lead investigator token. I guess we're going to pass that to Hank Sampson. He's going to be our new lead investigator for the moment. Our new investigator will be Norman Withers, the astronomer. 3 lore, 1 influence, 3 observation, 2 strength, 1 will. He has health of 5, sanity 7. His action is spend 2 clues to discard 1 monster on a space containing a gate. And then his passive is once per round you may spend 1 sanity in place of spending a clue. Okay, let's find out what Norman begins the game with and where he starts. Norman's going to begin in Arkham, and he starts with a Feed the Mind spell. Okay. His Feed the Mind spell is a ritual. It says, as an action, test lore -1. If you pass, choose an investigator on your space to improve 1 skill of his choice, then flip the card. Well, at the beginning of the game, that would have been really useful, but I think at this point in the game, that's kind of marginal. All right, that is going to complete the Mythos phase, and we'll move on to another turn. We're quickly running out of time. The Doom track is at 3 right now. We're ready to begin a new turn. Our lead investigator now is Hank Sampson. He's currently in Tokyo, and he's pretty banged up. He has 3 health and 3 sanity. Well, Hank isn't going to be able to remain in Tokyo with those monsters there, so I think we're going to have to do a move action for him. He'll move to Shanghai. And I think he's going to undertake a rest action that'll move him up to 4 health, 4 sanity. That'll complete Hank's turn, and we'll move on to our new character, which is Norman Withers, the astronomer. He is in Arkham. Norman's in a space with a werewolf, and Norman is not a combat character by no means. He has no equipment, and his strength is a 2, so I think we're going to have to do a move action. We'll have Norman move to London. And while he's in London, he'll do a focus action and gain a focus token. That will end his turn. We'll move on to Roland Banks. Roland is currently in the Midwest, and he's somewhat banged up. He's going to do a rest action, and that'll gain him 1 sanity, bringing his sanity up to 3, and his health will be up to 6. And I think Roland is going to travel to Arkham. He'll try to take on that werewolf that's there. He's a little bit more capable than Norman Withers was, so he'll use that rail connection and travel from the Midwest to Arkham. Roland arrives in Arkham. It will complete his turn, and we'll move on to Daryl Simmons, who's in Istanbul. Daryl's in Istanbul. There's a cultist there. If another cultist appears there due to the reckoning effect of Yig, we're going to lose another point on the doom track. And we're really caught like in a death spiral right now. We have to try to solve that winged serpent mystery, and we've only got one hit on that out of a possible 6. And Hank Sampson is kind of banged up. I have no characters near Tokyo at present. It seems like a losing effort. I think what we'll do is we'll leave Daryl Simmons in Istanbul, and he'll end up trying to take out that cultist. And then if he's successful, maybe he can undertake the expedition there. So we'll start out with Daryl Simmons. He will do a focus action. And then I think Daryl is going to use a component action on his card. It says look at the top 5 cards of the asset deck, put them back in any order, then discard any number of cards from the reserve. And that's what we'll do. Top 5 cards are revealed to be Police Raid, Agency Quarantine, Dynamite. That's kind of a good card. As an action, each monster on your space loses 3 health, then discard the card. That would be quite valuable for Hank Sampson to get, and then to move into Tokyo. So we're going to put that Dynamite on the top. The other cards are Arcane Tome and Arcane Sutra. So we're going to rearrange those cards back, and then we're going to take a look at the reserve. Another good card is that Agency Quarantine. When you gain this card, immediately choose a space. Each monster on the chosen space loses 4 health, then discard the card. I think that one's going to supersede the Dynamite. We'll put that on top, Dynamite next. That's good. And then we're able to discard as many cards as we wish from the reserve and then replace them with the new cards. I'm going to get rid of the Lucky Ring, Tome of Horrors, and Mystic Tome, and we'll replace those. New cards are Agency Quarantine, Dynamite, and Police Raid. All of those will be good for attacking monsters, so that might be the way we can try to get out of this. Okay, that will complete Daryl Simmons's action phase. We'll move on to the encounter phase. Hank Sampson is our lead investigator. He's in Shanghai. He's going to do a token encounter, and he'll do a research encounter in Shanghai. Shanghai is obviously a city, so we'll read that portion of the card. It says, you catch the man's reflection and see him for what he is, one of the serpent people. You try to covertly follow him to his lair. Test observation -1. Hank Sampson's observation value is a 3. He doesn't have any other cards that can directly help him with that. So we'll have him do the test at 3 and -1. He'll be rolling 2 dice for the test. He rolls 1 success. He's got a 5. We'll continue reading. It says, if you pass, you reach the creature's laboratory. Gain this clue. Okay, that's good. So we've gained the clue. That will complete Hank Sampson's encounter phase. We'll move on to Norman Withers in London. And Norman is in London, and I think we'll have him, we have a choice of either trying the research token encounter or a London encounter, which would possibly spawn some clue tokens. And I think what we'll do is we're going to take the London encounter and try to spawn some clues. And the London encounter reads, you meet an eccentric painter in Soho who offers to show you his work. Amid his bizarre alien landscapes, you notice some familiar details. Test observation. Withers' observation is a 3, so we'll be rolling 3 dice. Norman rolled 1 success. He has a 5. We'll continue reading. It says, if you pass, spawn 1 clue on a space of your choice. Okay, that's good. We'll pick a spot on the board to spawn a clue. And I think I'll spawn that clue in Shanghai. That's where Hank Sampson is. We'll place that clue token there. We'll move on to Roland Banks. He's in Arkham, and there's a werewolf present, so we're going to have to do a combat encounter against the werewolf. We'll start out the encounter with a will test. Roland Banks has a will of 3. And he performs great. He's got 2 5s, so there'll be no sanity damage. We'll move on to the strength test. The strength test for Roland Banks is going to be 2. He's got an improvement, that's 3. He's going to use the axe, giving him a total of +2, that's 5. And so he'll be rolling 5 dice for the test. And Roland ended up with 2 successes. He's got 2 6s. That's enough to take out the werewolf, and he'll take no damage in the process. So that was great. That's going to kill the werewolf. There are no remaining monsters in his space, so he can undertake a bonus action. And his bonus action is going to be to attempt to close that gate. So we'll draw a gate card. And the card reads, The Past. You appear on the continent of Mu the day it was destroyed and pulled beneath the ocean. Resolve the pass effect to discover what you can before the island is destroyed, or resolve the fail effect to reverse the magic that pulled you here. And I think we're going to attempt the pass effect. That says the carnage around you is traumatic to witness, a will -1 test. Roland Banks has a will value of 3, so he'll be rolling 2 dice for the test. And unfortunately, Roland failed miserably. He rolled 2 1s. He has no re-rolls of any that he can use. Nope, there are none. He does have the practiced condition, so I think we're going to have to employ that. We got to pull out all the stops. So we're going to use his practiced condition, and that says once per round you may roll 1 additional die and re-roll up to 1 die when resolving the test. So I think that's what we're going to do. We'll roll a brand new die and then re-roll 1 of those 1s. And we'll see what we get. He got a success. That's great. He's got a 5. And it says here that where is that? If you pass, you find ancient sorcerers trying to save Mu who are willing to use their power to repair the tear in reality. Close this gate. Okay, so we've closed the gate in Arkham. That's great. And that practice condition was very valuable to Roland Banks. And that will finish his encounter phase. We'll move on to Daryl Simmons. Daryl is in Istanbul, and there is a cultist there, so we're going to have to do a combat encounter. And we'll begin with the will test. It has a will of no modifier with 1 horror. So Daryl Simmons has a will of 3. He'll be rolling 3 dice for the test. He has a clue and a focus token. And he rolls no successes, so we're going to take the horror damage of the cultist. That's going to be 1, so that will reduce his sanity level from 3 down to 2. We'll move on to the strength test. It's a strength -1, and it has a damage value of 2 with 1 toughness. If we end up taking damage from this, we're going to gain a poisoned condition. Daryl Simmons has a strength of 2, and unfortunately he has no other weapons to help him at this time, so he's going to roll 2 dice for the test. And Daryl failed miserably. He has 2 1s. We have a clue and a focus token. We'd have to pull 2 successes for 2 in order to stop him from getting that poison condition. But I think what we'll do is we'll at least try to get rid of that cultist. So I'm going to see if I can at least pull 1 success to get rid of the cultist. We'll do a focus token and re-roll 1 of those dice. He rolled a 6, so he's successful. And we could burn the clue token in an attempt to try to totally defeat the cultist without taking the poison condition. I guess we might as well. At this point, we'll use the focus token and re-roll that failed. Use the clue token and re-roll the failed die. Here's the roll. He rolled a 6. We were actually able to do it. The cultist is defeated and he takes no damage from the encounter. That's great. And that will complete the encounter phase. We'll move on to the Mythos phase. Mythos card is a green card called Painful Memories. We'll begin with a Omen track. The Omen track is going to advance to the red fire circle, and we have a total of 1 red gate on the board. that is in Sydney. So we're going to move the Doom track down by 1. That will move it down to 2. And the next is going to be a monster surge that's going to occur in Sydney. We're going to be spawning 2 additional monsters in Sydney for the 3 that are already there. And those are revealed to be a carrier night gaunt and a fire vampire. The fire vampire has a reckoning effect. So we'll take a look at those. The reckoning effect is move this monster 2 spaces toward the nearest investigator, then the investigator on this space loses a health. And those are the statistics for those. We'll place those in monster stands, and then we'll move on to the spawning of clues, which is the next step on the card. And incidentally, those red toppers on those monster tokens, those are just reminders that those monsters have reckoning effects. It easily draws your attention to the map, and they're pretty useful. Okay, we'll spawn some clues. We'll draw 2 clues. And the clues are revealed to be in Rome and Space 21, which is in the Australian outback. So we'll place those accordingly. And the event now is next. It's called Painful Memories event. Each investigator loses health and or sanity equal to the number of impairment tokens he has. Then each investigator discards all of his impairment tokens. Well, that's one thing we have in abundance is impairments. Now it does say impairment tokens. So what happens if a character has a -2, a double impairment? I'm guessing that that would be counted as just 1 because it says impairment tokens. So we'll start out with Hank Sampson has 1 impairment, and I guess we'll have him lose a health, and then he's able to get rid of that impairment. That's great. Norman Withers has none. Roland Banks has 1 impairment, so he's going to lose a health, and that will get rid of 1 of his impairments. That's the -2 to -1. Daryl Simmons has 1 impairment. We'll have him lose a strength, or health rather, and that will get rid of his observation impairment. So that actually worked out pretty well for us. That's going to complete the turn, and we'll move on to another turn. And we'll begin our next turn. The Doom track is at 2, and we'll start with our lead investigator, Hank Sampson. He's in Shanghai. And I think what we're going to do is make a full court press in an attempt to gain some items from the reserve. There are many of them out there that would really do a great job on inflicting some hits on these monsters. So I think that's the tactic that we're going to try. Hank Sampson is in Shanghai. I think what I'll do is have him do a rest action that will give him, raise him from 3 to 4 health. And his sanity is already full at 4, so we'll start with that. And then our next action will be to acquire assets. We're going to do an influence test. Sampson has an influence of 2, so he'll be rolling 2 dice. Hank ended up rolling 1 success, and I think what he's going to do is take a debt condition, a bank loan rather, and that will give him 2 extra successes. That gives him a total of 3 successes. And I think what he's going to do is take the police raid card. So he's going to gain that police raid card. And we're going to give him the a debt condition. And that police raid reads service. When you gain this card, immediately choose a space. Each monster on the chosen space loses 3 health. Well, that is absolutely fantastic. We're going to select Tokyo. And that's going to inflict 3 hits on the winged serpent and 3 on the flying polyp. So that will reduce the winged serpent down to toughness of 2 and the flying polyp at a toughness of 1. That was absolutely fantastic. And the replacement card in that reserve is going to be, and we've replaced that card in the reserve. That is Arcane Tome. It says gain +2 lore when resolving spell effects. When you perform a rest action, you may test lore. If you pass, gain a spell. Our next investigator is Norman Withers. He's in London. And I think what we're going to do there is he unfortunately only has an influence of 1. So I think what we'll do is we'll have Norman do a focus action and a gather resources action. That'll earn him a token of each. And that's going to complete his turn. We'll move on to Roland Banks. Roland is currently in Arkham. And I think he has 2 resource tokens right now. So I think what we're going to do is we'll start out with a focus action, giving him a possible reroll in case he needs it. We'll give him a focus token. And then he is going to attempt to acquire assets. He has an influence of 2. We'll have him roll 2 dice. And Roland rolled 2 successes, and I think we're going to do the same thing for him. He's going to take out a bank loan. It's going to give him 2 additional successes for a total of 4 successes. And he's going to purchase Agency Quarantine. So he's going to gain his debt condition, but he does have the Agency Quarantine. That reads, Service. When you gain this card, immediately choose a space. Each monster on the chosen space loses 4 health, then discard this card. Well, I think what we are going to do is, it's a little bit of a waste because we've already got those monsters down pretty far, but we're going to use that on Tokyo. And that is going to kill the winged serpent and also the flying polyp. We'll remove those from the board. And then at the end of this phase, we are going to complete our first mystery. And the reserve is refilled with Arcane Sutra. It's a tome, gain +2 lore when resolving spell effects, and you may re-roll 2 dice with matching results when resolving a lore test as a part of the spell effect. Okay. That's going to complete Roland Banks' actions. We'll move on to Daryl Simmons. He is in Istanbul. And Daryl, I think, is going to gain a focus action, and then he's going to do a rest action. And that rest action will move him from to 5 of 7 health and 3 of 5 sanity. That'll complete Daryl Simmons' action phase. We'll move on to the encounter phase with Hank Sampson in Shanghai. Hank is in Shanghai, and he's going to try a research encounter, token encounter. Shanghai is a city, and it reads, You find a lair of the serpent people hidden in an abandoned refinery. Gain this clue. As you investigate, one of the creatures discovers you. A serpent people monster ambushes you. If you lose health from the test, gain a poison condition. Okay, so a serpent people is going to come out on the board in an ambush. Hank has gained the clue, and he has that special ability that you do not resolve will test during a combat encounter unless you take health damage. So we'll pass on that for now. The strength test is -1. It has damage 3 with 2 toughness. And we'll begin the combat roll with that. Hank Sampson has a strength of 4. He's going to be using his spirit dagger, which will give him +2 to combat. So that'll give him a total of 6 dice, and the modifier for the test is -1. He'll be rolling 5 dice for the test. And Hank rolled a total of 2 successes, 2 6s. That's enough to kill the creature. And unfortunately, though, he would take 1 point of damage from the encounter. And the test said if you lose health from the strength test, gain a poison condition. So I think what we'll try to do is, I'll see if I have a reroll available. I could spend a clue token. He has 2 of those. And that would avoid that, maybe that poison condition. He does have the camera. We'll use the camera to spend a clue and gain a clue. So we'll do that. It'll allow him to re-roll 1 of those dice. The roll is a 1. That's a failure. And I guess what we'll do is we'll spend our last clue then and see if we can re-roll that one again. And he failed. So he does kill the creature. He's going to take 1 point of damage and unfortunately a poisoned condition. And that's going to complete Hank's encounter phase. We'll move on to Norman Withers in London. Norman's in London. He's going to undertake a research encounter, and we'll draw a research card. London is a city, and it reads, while you're searching for a missing person, you discover that he's been transformed by Yig's curse. A cultist monster ambushes you. If you defeat it, you have a chance to examine the creature again. Examine the creature, gain the clue. Okay, so we're going to be ambushed by a cultist. And we'll begin with a will test. Norman has a will of 4, so he'll be rolling 4 dice for that test. He rolls 1 success. That's enough to avoid the sanity damage. And we'll move on to the combat portion of the test. It's a strength -1 test. Norman has a strength of 2, so he'll only be rolling 1 die for the test. It would be, a success would be enough to defeat the creature, but he's going to take 1 point of damage, and then also he would gain that poison condition. The roll is a 3. I think we're going to try a focus action to see if we can get rid of that. Roll it again. He rolled a 4. That's a failure. I guess we'll burn another one. It's his last focus. See if we can do it. Failure. Okay, so in this case, he is going to take 2 points of damage, I believe. Is that right? Yes. 2 points of damage, and he'll also gain a poison condition. And that's going to move old Norman down to 3 health and a poison condition. We'll move on to Roland Banks. Roland is in Arkham, and I think I'm going to have him, I think he'll just do a generic city encounter in Arkham. The main focus in Arkham is gaining incantation spells that really wouldn't help him too much at this point. And the general city encounter reads, a notorious crime boss offers to sell you valuable information. However, his asking price is more than you can afford. You may gain a debt condition. If you gain the condition, he shares what he knows, gain 1 task unique asset. Well, he already has a debt condition, so we won't do that. We're going to end up passing on that, and we'll move on to Daryl Simmons in Istanbul. Daryl is in Istanbul, and he's going to do a token encounter, and we're going to attempt that expedition. And the card reads, Istanbul, on a high hill, you find a large flat stone carved with images of constellations. Locals claim these were left by the astrologers, Epiphanes. You search the area for more of these carved stones. Test observation. Daryl Simmons has an observation of 4. So we'll be rolling 4 dice for the test, and he's going to gain an additional 1 when he's doing a location encounter in a city. That's his passive ability. So he'll be rolling a total of 5 dice. Daryl rolls 3 successes, so we'll read the success portion of the card. The discovery makes you famous. Improve influence. All right, he's going to gain an improvement to influence. That will give him influence of 4. And the rest of the card reads, you study the stars to read Epiphanes' message. Test lore. His lore value is 1, and he has an improvement that'll give him a total of 2. And Daryl rolled a 6 and a 4. He has a success. It says if you pass, you decipher a warning. Advance the active mystery by 1. Well, unfortunately, we have no active mystery because it's in the process of being solved. Oh, boy, I could have used that a few turns ago. Oh, boy. All right, so we're not going to gain any benefit from that. That's going to complete our encounter phase. We'll move on to the mythos phase. Oh, and incidentally, the expedition moved to the pyramids. And the card is a yellow card, and it's called Down the Rabbit Hole. We'll begin with a Omen track advancement. The Omen track is going to advance from the red fire circle to a blue star pattern. We currently have 1 blue gate in Tokyo, and that's going to advance the Doom track from 2 down to 1. And the next portion of the card is a Reckoning phase, and we'll begin with monsters with reckoning actions. There are a few out here. And one of them was a fire vampire in Sydney, and that instructed us to move 2 spaces towards the nearest investigator, which in this case was Hank Sampson in Shanghai. And when it gets there, the investigators lose 1 investigation, or 1 health token rather, so that will move Hank Sampson from 3 down to 2. And the other monster with a reckoning effect is the Child of the Goat in San Francisco. We're going to roll a die. On a result of 1 or 2, it's going to move the doom track by 1, and that would get us to 0, and Yig would awaken. And the roll was a 2, so that is going to bring us down to 0, and Yig is going to awaken. And Yig's card says, when Yig awakens, flip this sheet and resolve the Yig awakens effect on the back. And Yig awakens. Each investigator that has a poison condition gains a cursed condition. Place 8 Eldritch tokens on this sheet. We've placed 8 Eldritch tokens near his card, and now we're going to have to discover how many people have poison conditions and they're going to gain cursed conditions. And that's going to be Norman Withers. Looks like, and Hank Sampson. So both of them are going to be gaining cursed conditions, if it could be any worse. So that means that only 6s will be successes for all their tests for Hank Sampson and Norman Withers. And then in addition, the effects will be for the final mystery. The Serpent people have regained the favor of Yig and now call upon him to rid their kingdom of the wretched humans that infest it. When 3 mysteries have been solved, you have discovered Yig's hiding place in Central America. Move each cultist monster on the game board to space 7 and spawn the Yig epic monster on that space. When the Yig epic monster is defeated, the final mystery is solved and the investigators would win the game. And it also says now, Father of Serpents, when the investigator is defeated or devoured, the player is not eliminated. Each time the doom would advance, discard an Eldritch token from the sheet instead. Then if there are no Eldritch tokens on the sheet, investigators lose the game. Each time the doom would retreat, 1 investigator may discard a cursed condition. Oh boy. All right, the next step in the reckoning resolution is we did monsters. The next is Ancient One. Well, Yig no longer has a reckoning effect, so I guess that's something that's good. Next would be any Mythos cards that are in play. There are none. And then it's possessions and conditions. And we'll start with our lead investigator. He has several cards that are reckoning effect. He has a poisoned, a debt condition, and a cursed condition. So I guess we'll start with the cursed condition. It says on a roll a die out of 4, 5, or 6, you can discard the card. So I guess we'll try that first. And we'll see what happens. 4, 5, or 6. And of course we failed. Okay. The next would be the poison condition. We'll see what that is. It says persisting illness, the rash covering most of your body continues to spread. You are regularly stricken with fits of coughing, and it has become hard to move. Test strength. He has a strength of 4. So we're going to roll 4 dice on that test. Let's see what happens. He has 1 success. If you pass, discard this card. All right, so we've gotten rid of that poison condition. Finally, we have a debt condition. It says some men have come to collect on your debt. Flip the card. Local authorities. Someone was asking about you, said a fellow traveler. They said you owe quite a bit of money. Naturally, I said I didn't know anything, but you may want to find your way to a new town soon. You attempt to hide from the police. Test observation. Okay, his observation is a 3. So we'll have him roll 3 dice. He has no successes. If you fail, Move to the nearest city space and gain a detained condition unless you discard one ally asset. Well, he has no ally asset, so we don't have any choice in that matter. So the nearest city for Hank Sampson, he's already in Shanghai, so he is going to gain a detained condition. He gains the detained condition. It's a restriction. You cannot move or perform any actions other than the action on this card. Instead of resolving an encounter, flip this card. It's a local action testing influence. All right, we'll move on to Norman Withers. He has a cursed and a poisoned condition. We'll start out with his cursed condition. It says roll a die on a 4, 5, or 6. He can discard the card. And he rolled a 1. Oh, my. So that's going to remain. Then we go to the poison condition. It says lose a health. That'll bring him down from 3 down to 2 health. And next would be Roland Banks. He has 1 reckoning effect. His reckoning effect is a debt condition. And we'll see what that says. Some men have come to collect on your debt. Flip the card. Make a deal. Walking into the alley, you hear the distinct ticking of a watch. An intruder dressed in fine black suit stands in the shadows. He tells you that he'll help you in exchange for an undefined favor. You may gain a dark pact condition. If you do not, the ticking noise begins to hypnotize you. Advance the doom by 1. Well, I guess, and then it says then discard the card. I guess we'll have to just gain the Dark Pact. I don't I don't like taking those, but in this case there's really not much of an option. So we'll discard the card and gain a Dark Pact. So Roland gains his Dark Pact, and that's going to be during a reckoning effect. He's going to roll a die on a 1. It's time to fulfill his part of the bargain. Okay, we'll move on to Daryl Simmons. Daryl does not have any reckoning effects or cards, so that will end that portion. We'll move on to spawning a gate. The gate is going to be a green one that will appear in Tunguska, and the next gate on top of the stack is going to be Hyperborean Space 13. It's a red gate, so we're going to spawn the gate in Tunguska and a monster there. A gate opens in Tunguska and a cultist comes through. And now we'll move on to the event. It's called Down the Rabbit Hole. You see more than just other worlds. You can see the space between worlds. You feel with a crushing certainty that it is in this other space that you will find the answers you need. You believe that the only way to restore sanity is to dive headfirst into madness. And it's an event. Each investigator on a space containing a gate may gain a lost in time and space condition to close 1 gate on his space. Well, unfortunately, none of our investigators are on a space with a gate, so that one will not apply, and that's going to end the Mythos phase. And our finally solved a mystery. It says at the end of the Mythos phase, if the winged serpent epic monster has been defeated, solve the mystery. So we've solved our first mystery, and we'll find out what the next mystery would be. That one reads, Migration of Serpents. With no seeming regard for climate or terrain, snakes have been seen all over the world, writhing towards some unknown common goal. When this card enters play, move each clue on the game board to the nearest expedition space. After an investigator resolves a research encounter, he may spend 1 clue he gained from that encounter to place that clue on this card. At the end of the Mythos phase, if there are clues on this card equal to the number of investigators, solve the mystery. All right, so we're going to move all those clue tokens towards the pyramids, which is where the expedition is at. So we've moved all of the clue tokens towards the pyramids, and that would be our next mystery. So I think we're going to end the video here, and I'm actually contemplating whether I should even continue with the video. We would still have to solve an additional 2 mysteries on top of defeating the Yig epic monster that would appear in Space 7 in Central America. So, and we would have basically 8 movements of the Doom track to do that. That would be the number of Eldritch tokens that we have on the card, and when those run out we would lose. But boy, I really don't think there's a path forward on this. I think we're going to just end the series here and just call it a day. I definitely made mistakes during the playthrough. I should have been more aggressive and gone after that feathered serpent in Tokyo much sooner than what I did, the winged serpent rather. And I just was too timid in trying to risk the investigators with getting damage. It ended up that our cards in the reserve really came into effect, and we were able to take out that epic monster and a flying polyp. But anyway, well, thanks very much for watching this series, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you don't mind that we're canceling this, but I just don't see a path forward, and I have a new game coming in the mail that I'm going to be bringing to the board hopefully very soon. So hopefully we will see you then. Thanks for joining me at the Solo Gamers Club, and have a good evening. Good night.